All right, good morning. All the gross anatomy, localizations of the heart, all these different structures are well explained in the lecture. So I'm not going to go over each structure because it's very well explained. I really want you to get familiar with the gross anatomy of the heart. The part that it's more pointed, it's called apex, and it's slightly extend to the left and rest on the diaphragm, while the base is lie beneath the second rib and point toward the right shoulder. So this is the locations of the heart in the thorax. I want you to get familiar. As I said, all this gross anatomy, it's really well explained in the lecture. So remember that we have two circuit, pulmonary circuit and systemic circuit. The right side, the blue color that you are seeing here, the right side of the heart pumps oxygen blood that is very poor on blood is very poor here on oxygen, and he enters his chamber through this vena cava, the superior and inferior vena cava, and he unload the carbon dioxide and pick up the oxygen. The blood vessel that carry the blood to and from the lung form the pulmonary circuit, right? And the pulmonary circuit is really the function is strictly to provide for gas exchange, oxygen versus CO2. So he brings CO2, get oxygen, and the oxygen enters the heart, then distributed to the rest of the body. So, and this is the function of the left side of the heart, is the one that will pump the oxygenated blood coming from the lung to the rest of the body. And the blood vessels that carry blood to and from all the body tissue form what we call systemic circuit. All right, so here is, if we go step by step, so the right atrium receives oxygen poor blood, a blood that is very poor on oxygen, from the body via the both vena cava, the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, and the coronary, if you see it also, and the coronary sinus. From the right atrium, the blood flew to the via the tricuspid, which is the valve, to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, the blood flows through the pulmonary valve into the pulmonary trunk. The pulmonary trunk branch into left and right pulmonary arteries, which carry blood to the lung, where the blood unloads. This is a gas exchange, unloads carbon dioxide and pick up oxygen. The oxygen now reach on blood reach on oxygen returns to the heart via the four pulmonary vein, and the remaining step is described really how the blood will flow through the left side of the heart, which is a part of the systemic system. We left the pulmonary system now. Pulmonary system, the strict function is just a gas exchange, bringing CO2 to the lung, taking oxygen from the lung. The oxygen rich blood enters the left atrium via the fourth pulmonary vein, And then from the left atrium, the blood flows through the mitral valve to the left ventricle. And from the left ventricle, the blood flows through the aortic valve to the aorta. And the oxygen-rich blood is now distributed, delivered to the rest of the body via the systemic arteries. So let's talk about the major arteries, because this is a thing. Even if I explain that, please go to the lectures. I did explain those very, very well in the lectures for the anatomy of the heart. So let's talk about the right coronary arteries. The right coronary artery, as you can see over here, if you follow it, is branched from the ascending aorta, just above the aortic valve, and it encircles the heart in the coronary sulcus. The left coronary artery, however, branched from the ascending aorta too, but it passed posterior to the pulmonary trunk. If you see it, it's a shadow because it's a posterior, it's under the pulmonary trunk. Right marginal, as it's marginal, a right marginal artery, it's branched from this right coronary artery. Just follow it. And it's in the lateral, it's localized in the lateral portion of the right ventricle. The posterior interventricular artery branched also from the right coronary artery, but it's posterior to the interventricular sulcus. The left coronary artery, as I said, is branched also from the ascending aorta, posterior to the pulmonary trunk. The anterior interventricular is big over here. The anterior interventricular artery branched from the left coronary artery in the anterior interventricular sulcus. So this one is in the top, and the other one, the posterior interventricular artery, are in the bottom. The circumflex artery branched from it's branched from the left coronary artery and is localized in the coronary sulcus. That's for the major arteries. The major veins, we have the great, middle, and the small vein, cardiac vein. So the great cardiac vein, it's localized in the anterior interventricular sulcus parallel to the anterior interventricular artery. If you remember, that's the anterior ventricular, so the parallel for it is the great cardiac vein to the artery. You will see them both together parallel to each other. The middle cardiac vein is localized in the interventricular sulcus parallel to the posterior interventricular vein. So that's the posterior interventricular vein, and the parallel for it is the middle cardiac vein. The small cardiac vein, it's localized in the right ventricle parallel to the right marginal artery. And then we have the anterior cardiac vein, which localizes in the anterior surface of just the right atrium. It's just in the right atrium. You have also get to have the histology of the muscle of the cardiac with this intercalated disc that separates two cardiac cells. And here is, I really want you to read the lab, and in the same times, if you have any get familiar with the gross anatomy. This is what I'm saying. Get familiar with the gross anatomy of the human heart, of the heart in general, and it's very well explained in the lectures. So please listen to the lectures. And the moderator band is very important because it's the one, when we study the conductions of the heart, we would see it is the one that will actually connect the pulmonary muscles with the interventricular septum. So let's see those review sheet questions, and remember, the lab practical is not mean only. This is just a review, so you can, for this review sheet, so you can get, now I always say like, you need really to need the lab. That's not mean that the practical will have only what this review sheet cover. It may have a lot of histology that are related also. The gross anatomy of the heart, I'm not going to answer those questions. You have to get familiar with, okay? This is just so you can train yourself on localizing what is, when you are in anterior view, what is in the left is in your left hand. All right, so you know that that's anatomy 2401. You know what is posterior view, what is anterior view. The next, match the term key for the descriptions below. Look at location of the heart in the thorax. That's the one that is location of the heart in the thorax. It's the mediastinum. It's F, right? This visceral pericardium. It's called also epicardium. A receiving chamber of the heart, that's the atria, that is receiving chamber of the heart. Layer composed of cardiac muscles is the muscle for the heart, it's the myocardium. Provide nutriment blood to the heart muscle, that's the coronary arteries, which is a C. Lining of the heart chamber, that's the endocardium, which is the endocardium, which is the E. I'm just answering. I have no idea what is the letter, so just go by the word I am saying. Drain blood in the right atriums is the coronary sinus, which is a D. Okay, so this is which valve are anchored by the cordini tendini? The anchor of the intraventricular valve they are the flaps during the ventricular systole, they're preventing backflow of the blood to go back into atria. So those are the ventricular valve. I really want you to I am not just giving you the answers. I want you really to look, to read, because if I give the answer, you are just going to, oh, okay, we have the answers we don't need. So they are saying, okay, pulmonary, systemic, and coronary circulations. Pulmonary, I told you what the pulmonary circulation is, what is the systemic circuit is, and what is the coronary circulation is. You are, if you understand how the circulations of the red blood cells in the human body, so you are going to be able to answer these questions. You know that the right atrium through the tricuspid valve go to the right ventricle, pulmonary semilunar valve to the pulmonary tract, to the right and left pulmonary arteries, to the capillary beds, right? Then the valve that is involved is the mitral bicuspid valve to the left ventricle. Then from the left ventricle, he will enter the aorta to the aortic semilunar valve, then to the systemic arteries, from the aorta to the systemic arteries. Then he go again the capillary beds of the tissue to the systemic vein. Then from the systemic vein to the inferior vena cava. Then to the superior vena cava and the coronary sinus, entering the right atrium of the heart. If ever the mitral valve does not close properly, you know which circuit is going to be affected. It's the systemic circuit, right? It's the systemic circuit that will be affected. This is just, you have to read and make differences between the skeletal muscles and the cardiac muscle. Both tissue are striated, right? But this is skeletal muscles are long cylindrical cells with many peripheral nuclei cells, par cells. Cardiac cells have one or two centrally localized nuclei pi cells. They are branched ends, and they have these tight junctions that we can call intercalated disc that we don't see in the skeletal muscles. And this interlocated disc, this is very special arrangement in the heart because it's allowed the pumping action of the heart to be carefully coordinated for maximum efficiency. Well, if you do dissections, if we are in the lab, you will be able to differentiate between the left and the right ventricle because the left ventricle is more firm and thicker and less compressible, and the right ventricle is flabby. And even when you measure the thickness of the ventricular wall, the left ventricle is much more thicker. And this is really, the structure is really related to the function because the left ventricle pumps blood through the high resistant systemic circulations. So it has to be stronger than the right ventricle, which pump blood through the short, low resistance pulmonary circuit. So the similar valve prevent the backflow into the ventricle mitral. Right, and the tricuspid valve prevent the backflow into the atria. So when the ventricle was compressed, as in systole, the ventricular valve flaps move superiorly into the closed position. When water was poured, as when blood flew into the seminal valves, the cups filled and closed the valve. Number 14, compare or contrast the structure of the mitral and tricuspid valve. Well, both have 10 flaps secured to papillary muscle by chordae tendineae. The right valve have 3 cups and the left valve have 2. That's the only difference. The left anterior descending artery, if you look at the table that you have in your lab, it supplies the majority of the blood to the interventricular septum and the anterior ventricles, right? So if I have any blockage in the left anterior descending artery, it prevents oxygenated blood from reaching cardiac muscles. So this will explain the heart attack. Because if there are blockage on the left anterior, as I said, it supplies the majority of the blood into interventricular and the anterior ventricles. So it will prevent the oxygenated blood from reaching those ventricles. And the atria by itself is not power enough to pump blood to the lung and the body. So therefore, this is cardiac heart attack. Congestive heart failure is inability to pump efficient blood. The edema on the right and the edema on the left. If we have an edema in the right side of the heart, that means you are going to see the lower extremities of the body swollen, ankle, legs, feet, and even some abdomen liver, some abdominal organ. If the edema is in the left side, you will have if the left side of the heart fails, the pressure it's going to be built up in the vein of the lung, causing fluid to leak into the lung. So you are going to see an edema, especially causing pulmonary edema with short breath. This is what's going to happen if it's in the left side. Because if it's in the left side, it cannot handle the blood it gets from the lung. So therefore, the pressure fluid is going to build up in the vein of the lung, causing fluid to leak into the lung, causing lung edema. So that's conclude our, I believe so, because I'm going to move to, yeah. That's conclude our lab for today, what I need you to study. So if you have any questions, please never hesitate. Next, that's going to be in the Unit 2, we are going to study the conduction system and the ECG of the heart. All right, thank you.